Hey guys, in this video we're looking at finding the equation of a line, and we got a couple different formulas to go with this, so let me just kind of run through them. We have slope-intercept form, and this is going to be the workhorse. It's y equals mx plus b, and in this case the m is always going to be our slope, and b is going to be our y-intercept. We saw those in the last section. Standard form, so this is where the x's and y's are the same side. It's just another form of a line, and these both have kind of their place. We saw these back when we were doing intercepts, and we'll run into them again a little bit as we go forward. Point slope form, I don't use this one so much, but I'll do an example with it here somewhere. M is still our slope. X1 and Y1 are given a point, and I can get to the equation of a line either from here or here. It's like this one's sort of more of a way to set it up, and then this is sort of your destination. And I'll do an example where I do it both ways, but for me I tend to prefer this one, but they're both depending on the situation. Sometimes I'll do this too. And slope of a line, we just saw this one back in the slope section, and that's that one where we have two-ordered pair. We can use that to find our slope. And I'll just point out, point slope and slope of a line, these are actually the same equation. If I multiply up this x2 minus x1 right here, you can see I have something that looks like this side. If I relabel it, make the x's, the little 2's into just plain x's, then this is actually the exact same formula. So let's see what we can do with some of this, and we're just going to have a bunch of different prompts, and from that we're going to find equations. So this one, give the slope and y-intercept for the following equation, sketch the graph, give the slope of any line perpendicular to the line. Okay, so we're given this equation, and it's in slope-intercept form. So what that means is, and this one is the too easy, it's hard. So this is y equals 1x plus 3. So that little invisible 1 there, that's your slope. So that goes right here. B, that's going to be our y-intercept. It's 3. And then slope perpendicular, remember that if we have, if our slope is a over b, then our perpendicular slope is going to be negative, b over a. It's going to be the reciprocal with the opposite sign. So for this one, again, it's kind of like it's too easy, it's hard. This is going to be, if our slope is 1 over 1, if I flip it, then it's still 1 over 1, just negative. So our perpendicular slope would be negative 1. And for our graph, now here's where I really want to get away from having you guys like try to make a big table and plug stuff in, because it's so much easier than that. We're just going to start on our y-intercept right there at 3. Our slope is 1, so it's 1 over 1. So we go over 1, up 1, and that's it. That's our graph. So rather than the whole t-table thing that we saw earlier, when x is 0, y is 3, when x is 1, y is 4, we can just go, hey, start on 3, over 1, up 1, boom, there's a line. So to me, that is a much better way to graph. So that's how I'll show these as we go forward. It's kind of going backwards from the last example. We're given the graph, and then we're trying to find the stuff and find the equation. So I'll start with b just because it's easy. So it's right there, and that is negative 1. And then remember, like when we did slope in the last section, we just look for the next kind of convenient point where it's crossing, at a whole number. And then we can use that to get our slope. So we're going to go down 1, and then going to go right 3. So rise over run, negative 1/3. So our equation, remember, it's mx plus b. And so that's going to be y equals mx plus b. And I can't remember on the answer box. Look out if they have the y in front, you just need the mx plus b. If it says, the equation with no y in front, then you need to type the y equals part. So it just sort of depends how they ask it. But this would be y equals negative 1/3 x, and then minus 1. So these next couple are matched problems that I would give you. And, I'm just looking, and why is this? Oops, I made a correction in the notes. I'm just going to correct it here right now. I changed this when I realized I had a duplicate to 3x minus 1. So I'm going to do that. So let's see, this is going to go, m is 3, b is negative 1. And so if m is 3, that's the same thing as 3 over 1. So then m perpendicular will be the reciprocal and opposite sign, so negative 1/3. And then to graph, we'll just start on -1 right here. And then our slope was 3, so that's, again, rise and run. So I'm just going to rise 3, 1, 2, 3, and run 1. And just keep doing that if I want another point. And that would be our graph. And so these next two are the going backwards, given a graph, find the information in the equation. So I'll start right here. And that would be my y-intercept, so that's -2. Looks like that's a convenient point. So that's going right 2, and then it's going to go down 1. And so my slope would be rise over run, so -1 over 2. So that makes my equation y equals -1/2 x and -2. So notice when it's going kind of what I would think of as downhill, if we're thinking left to right, that's going to be a negative slope because the y value is negative, or the change in y is negative, excuse me. For this one, so we're starting at 4, and then it looks like right there is a good point. So we're going up 3, and loud motorcycle. Sorry, I think a motorcycle heading down to Alki there. So we got up 3 and then right 2, and so that's going to be 2/3. Sorry, that's actually going to be 3/2, distracted by the motorcycle. So 3/2. And then our equation is going to be y equals 3/2 x and then plus 4. Sorry, the motorcycle totally got me. How about minus and minus right there? There we go. I think I have that good now. Cool. Okay, for this next one, we're kind of heading into the more algebraic problems. And so this, we're given some information and trying to find the equation of the line based on that. So here we're given slope in 1 point, find the equation, answer in slope-intercept form, and again, that's that y equals mx plus b is what we're shooting for. So what they've given us is, actually I'm going to write that bigger right here, mx plus b. So they gave us m, cool, we know that. And then this -6, 1, that is an xy, right? That's just our ordered pairs from a couple sections ago. And so you look at this formula, and it's got 4 letters, y, m, x, and b. And I know m, x, and b, so that means I can shove those in here and then solve for b. So that would look like 1 equals -2/3, and then x is -6 plus b. So here we go, 1, and this would be 12 over 3, so 12 over 3 would be 4, plus b, and then subtract that 4 over, and I get b equals -3. So then my equation of my line is going to be y equals mx plus b, so that will go y equals -2/3, and then x comes back. We don't want the numbers, we want the variables in there now because it's our equation, and then -3 is a constant. It's always going to be our y-intercept, so that would be our equation of our line. I think I'm going to use this one to show that other method, and I'm going to do it once just so that you've seen it. And there's definitely places where I like this. I think as people are first learning to a technique like finding the equation of a line, I'm not sure it's best to have like 4 different ways to get there. I think getting good at one of them and kind of whichever one is the most general is kind of a good place to start. And then the next time you hit this, like in maybe 102 or 141, then you can kind of start adding in some of the extra little pieces. And you can do that now if you're comfortable, but I kind of find students sort of want a plan to get from A to B. So for me, this is going to be how I do most of them. But here's just to show, I'm going back to back here where we had that point slope form. And so let me just write that right here. And this is a perfectly good way to get to the equation. Oops, that should be an x. Trying talking right. This is a great way to get the equation line also. I've just kind of found when I'm teaching this as like the introduction to it, people sort of find this equation maybe a little intimidating, have a hard time remembering it. And then our answers always have to end up in this form anyhow. So for me, like I said, it's sort of just more about my preference for teaching. I show it this way, but this is also totally legit. So here, I could just take this point where the y is 1. I have my m, negative 2/3. X stays a variable, so these x's and y's are going to end up being these x's and y's in the equation after I clean it up. And then that's minus, and then you got to be careful with that little minus and minus right there. That's the other place where I like, this can get a little sketch. So then this will be y minus 1 equals negative 2/3 x plus 6. And so if you remember back in the formula section, they had us solve some things like this for y, and then this is how come, is because it shows up in this step. So then this is y minus 1 equals negative 2/3 x, and then 3 would go into 6 twice, times 2 would make negative 4, and then I can add that 1 over, and then here I am at the answer. So you can see I got the same thing either way. I just kind of, like I said, teaching wise, as an intro, I kind of prefer this method. So I'm going to keep showing it this way, but I just wanted to make sure that you at least seen this so you know it exists. If you want to play with it, you can use it on any problem. Once you have a point and a slope, this will get you to the exact same spot. So this next one is kind of a step back from the one I just did. The one I just did was like this one where we had a slope and a point. This one we just have 2 points, so I got to go back to our slope section, find our slope, doing the y2, y1, x2, x1 deal, and then I've basically rewritten it into this problem, and I can proceed from there and find b. So I'm going to do our m equals y2 minus y1, so 1 minus 3, and then x2 minus x1. So you see I'm just going this minus this, this minus this. And you don't have to memorize the formula if you can just kind of memorize the pattern to it. At least for my brain, patterns work better than formulas. So negative 2 there and a 6 here, and so that's going to simplify to negative 1/3. And so now that I have this, I can use either of these points like I did in that example like this. I'm going to use the one without the negative sign. If one looks easier, do that. Neither of these are going to be great, but that one's a little better. So I'm just going to use this point and that slope, and then just do what I did in example 5. So we got our y equals mx plus b, and this is going to be my x and my y. So y is 1, m is that negative 1/3 we just found. X is unfortunately 4, so this is going to be fractions, but sometimes there's fractions. If it helps, think that 4 over 1, so negative 1 times 4 is negative 4, and 3 times 1 is 3 plus b. And then I'm going to add this over, and as I do that, just for the sake of space, I'm going to make this 1 into a 3 over 3, because I can kind of see I'm going to have a common denominator in a second. So this will be 3 over 3, and then I'm going plus 4/3 on both sides. And so that would cancel out that one, and that would get me b. And then 3 and 4 makes 7/3 for b. So then our actual answer, so we found our m and our b, and now we just have to write it all down. So that's y equals negative 1/3 x, and then plus 7/3. If you were to, I was just looking at this and had the thought, someone out there probably thought, oh my god, how would I graph that? You would just graph these 2 points and draw a line through them. So when the y-intercept isn't awesome, a lot of times if you have any point at all and a slope, you can just start on that point even and go right 3 and down 1, and that would get you the line. But so there are ways. I don't think on the homework you'd have to graph anything quite that bad, but that's how you would go about it. So these next 3 examples are the ones I would have you try in class. And so this is going back to, y equals mx plus b. And in terms of memorizing formulas for the test, you need to know that one, and you need to know slope. The rest of it, you don't need to, know standard form or point slope. But these are the 2 that are kind of the workhorse for this section, or for this chapter. So I'm just going to plug into here, and there's my x and my y. So this is negative 3 equals 3/2, and then x is 4. plus b. And so this one turns out pretty good because 2 goes into 4 twice. So I can just go 3 times 2 is 6, and then plus b. And I'll scoot the 6 over. And then we got negative 9 equals b. So with that, then you just have to remember to write down the answer, especially if you're taking the exam. So it'd be y equals 3 halves x and then minus 9. And then here's our matched one with the 2 points. So we'll find m first. So we go y2 minus y1, so 2 minus 5, and then x2 minus x1. Again, with that negative coming up, don't even think about it, just 4 minus whatever it is, and negative 2. And that will keep you from kind of messing up those signs. So 2 minus 5, negative 3, 4 minus negative 2 would be 6. So our slope is 1/2. And then this is where now I know m. I'm going to use this one as my xy just because it has a negative, so that one looks easier. So we'll do our y equals mx plus b. So y is 2, m is negative 1/2, x is 4 plus b. And those cancel, so that makes a negative 2 right there plus b. And we just add the 2. Oops. And b equals 4. So answer would be y equals negative 1/2 x and then plus 4. And then this next one is really just the same question, but they phrased it a little bit different and gave you the x and y intercept. But these are still absolutely right, just a couple of ordered pair that I can put into our slope formula. Plus, this one has the bonus of being easier because I don't have to do this whole step. Because why do we do this? Well, we're trying to find the y-intercept. What's the y-intercept? It's right there, it's 5. So for this one, I'm not even going to have to do all that. I just have to find the slope of our line. So if I go 5 minus 0, that's our y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Again, there's that negative, so just write it down and then write down the number, and that'll keep you from hopefully missing the sign. So 0 minus the negative 2 is really 0 plus 2. And so our slope's going to be 5/2. And since they gave us the y-intercept in the directions, I can just write down the answer. Okay, and these last two questions are a little bit different. We're finding the equation of a line perpendicular to this graph that contains a point. So instead of being given 2 points and trying to get a slope from there, we're going to have to get it out of this equation. So what we want to do is go, let me just copy this down. If you remember back to the formula section where they had us solve for a particular variable, that's what we're going to do here is we're going to get the y by itself. Because once I do that, then I'm in y equals mx plus b, and I can read the slope right out of the formula. So I'm going to subtract the 3y over, or sorry, the 3x over. And it's going to get us to 5y equals negative 3x minus 5. And when we did this back in formulas, we just left it here because that was solved for y. But now we're going to be a little bit more particular about how we simplify. And this is simplified, but it's just not quite in the form that we want yet. And so the only piece we care about is here, but I want to make sure you know how to get from here to simplified properly. So this is going to go negative 3/5 x. And a lot of times people just kind of like cancel with the 5 and then not really worry about what was happening with the 3, or they'll just kind of disappear these and get negative 3/5. So it really is belonging to both. So this is our negative 3/5 x, and that would be a minus 1. We don't care about that for our purposes, but that's the proper way to simplify there. So what we care about, though, is this m, because that's the perpendicular piece. So m for this thing is negative 3/5, so that means m perpendicular is going to be positive, opposite sign, and 5/3. So now I got my slope, I got my point, I can toss those into here and kind of grind out some math with it. So let's see, xy, so y is negative 4, m is 5/3, x is 1, so we're going to have fractions, plus b. So that's going to be negative 4 equals 5/3 plus b. So then I would subtract this 5/3 over, and that's going to get me negative 4 minus 5/3 equals b. And then I'm going to get a common denominator right there. So this is going to be 3's. So now I have negative 12/3 minus 5/3 equals b. So putting those together, I got negative 17/3 equals b. And then my answer is y equals our slope. Careful not to grab the old slope, x, and then minus 17/3. And then this is the matched one that I'd have you try. So it's the same idea, except this time it's parallel instead of perpendicular. And so when we solve this, we won't have to do anything to the slope. What we get for the slope of this will be the same as ours. So here I'll just add the x, and then that gets me negative 3y equals x plus 1. And then we do the divide by negative 3 thing. And again, this is kind of funky looking, so I'm going to clean that up. So this would be y, and then x. For right now, I'm going to write plus 1 over negative 3, just to show, to kind of emphasize I'm splitting it to both pieces. And this looks terrible, so let me write that as negative 1/3 x. Plus and minus is kind of silly, so let's just write minus 1/3 there. And so again, this 1/3 I don't care, that's just my y-intercept. This one is my slope, and so my slope parallel is going to be the same thing, right? Because parallel lines have the same slope. So for our equation, we're going to do y equals mx plus b. So this is our x, this is our y, and then there's our m, and x is 3 plus our b. So this one comes out a little nicer than the last one. The 3's cancel. And then I'll add that 1 over, and we get b equals 3. So final answer would be y equals negative 3x and then plus 3.